Welcome, everybody. I'm David Burnett. I'm the head of Synagogue Council of Massachusetts. We're very excited to partner with JCAN and others to bring this. It's part of an ongoing collaboration initiative called Sustainable Synagogues, and we're happy that people have a chance to do well and do good at the same time. In not even an elevator speech at Synagogue Council, we're really here to support you all in your mission of, as congregations, being vital centers of Jewish life. We help put on seminars like this. We consult on an individual basis in many areas, so please feel free to get in touch. And I want to mention, upcoming on June 3rd, we have our program called Empowering Women's Leadership, and we're starting a granting and incubation initiative for women's mentorship and young leadership in synagogues. And next year also we're holding an Israel mission. Please stay in contact. And now you're going to hear from some experts and get some real value tonight. So again, welcome. I look forward to meeting you ongoing.
Good evening. I'm Rabbi Katie Allen. I'm the co-founder and president pro tem of the Jewish Climate Action Network, and I'm really, really thrilled to see all of you here. And I want to thank Temple Aliyah for hosting us and for hosting us underneath an amazing solar array and telling us all about that. I want to thank our partnership with the Synagogue Council and the Mass Interfaith Power and Light, who also partners with us to help make this happen. I especially want to thank Fred Davis and David Lowe, who have put in all the work to make this happen and are keeping us all to the clock. And also just our presenters, all of our presenters here and our vendors. I just want to say a brief word of Torah. So I was thinking about the idea of Klal Yisrael and the fact that this event, you know, like other Synagogue Council events, is also, and JCAN events, we are all here together no matter which kind of congregation we come from, and there are many different kinds of congregations represented here, and that's thrilling. And it takes Klal Yisrael, it takes all of us to do this work for everybody and for the whole planet and the whole of the Jewish people, for the whole of the planet. And I just wanted to, I was thinking of the song, Gesher Tsar Me'od. It's a very narrow bridge. But the ikar, the essence, is not to be afraid. And so this program is designed to get you past whatever those blocks are that are causing anxiety in someone and making it hard to get those solar panels up there. So I just want to welcome all of you, and I'm turning it over to the people who know more about this than I do.
So I'm Fred Davis, Vice President Pro Tem of Jewish Climate Action Network. I say welcome also, and I thank all of the exhibitors who are here tonight very much, and I want to encourage everyone that when we're done with the speaking presentations, for each of you to make sure, you can check it off on your list. Make sure you get to contact each of them, because they're here for a reason, you're here for a reason. It's to connect with each other. So if you take a look at this list, there's at least 19 congregations, unless somebody signed up late. You're on this list. That's a lot of congregations all in one place. It's fantastic. And one of our exhibitors went and saw this list and did the calculation and came up with this number. It's a lot of solar potential that you all represent, so fantastic. So I'll just ask, out of a hypothetical 0, you haven't even started thinking about solar, to 10, or 9.5, let's say, you're about to sign. Who's, say, 0 to 4? Just take a guess. Wow, okay. Who's 4 to 7? Who's 8? Okay, who's 9? Okay, I think you're all further ahead than you think. That's just me. But as
put their hands up again, because it was a great picture.
Yeah, the 0 to 4. Great. 0 to 4. Okay. Okay. You're here, and that makes a huge difference. As Rabbi said, there are obstacles. The obstacles that you know of and the obstacles you don't know of yet, they've all been shared before. These experts here know them. They've heard them a zillion times. We all work in silos in our own congregations. We think the obstacle that we just ran up against, nobody else in the universe has ever faced before, but in reality, they've seen it 20 times over. That's why they're here. That's why you're here to talk to them. Okay, so this list here, it shows your JCAN status, let's say. Jewish Climate Action Network. Many of the synagogues represented here have connection with JCAN. Some of them it says benchmark completed to the right, and I'll tell you what a benchmark is in just a second. But for those who don't yet have their benchmark completed, think about whether you'd like to commit to doing a benchmark. It's a very, very simple thing. Solar is complex. Benchmark is very, very easy. So if please talk to the JCAN people and move your status along is what I'd request. There are 62 synagogues now participating in Jewish Climate Action Network from all over the world, Canada and Australia and Israel included. And the JCAN program on carbon footprint at least consists of very simple but very powerful steps towards radical carbon reduction. And that's at the synagogue level and at the congregants level. So we offer a webinar on how to benchmark. And I'll just show you a couple of pictures of that. You go to the, we walk people through looking at the utility bills, where to get the information from. If you can see this, you don't have to get the detail, but you can get the gist. You grab the info from the utility bill, and then you're going to put that information into a spreadsheet that's developed by, can you raise your hand? Mass Interfaith Power and Light, thank you very much. And that's a fantastic tool that they provide to all of us. And when you're done, you come up with some nifty information such as your kBTU per square foot for the year. So this congregation happens to be my own. Anybody here from Temple Beth David and Westwood? Thank you, Dan. Shows 67.5. And what's important about that is that the average house of worship in the Northeast is 50. So how are we doing? Not so great. We're a little worse than average, right? But it also, the same benchmarking work gives you this output, get this view, which is pretty cool. It shows that at least for 3 years running, we've made good progress in decreasing our carbon footprint. This synagogue, also represented here, not my synagogue, shows even more consistent, over a longer period, consistent decline, and they have gotten to that magical average figure of 50. So congratulations to them. Yasher Kohen. So we also offer a webinar in setting climate goals. And you can go on our website and take the Climate Chutzpah Challenge. Anybody here checked it out yet? It takes like 5 minutes. And how many people here think they've got Climate Chutzpah? Come on. You're showing up for this event. You got chutzpah to show up to the event. Well, so that's the thing. None of us think we've got the moxie, but we do. Yes, we said yes, you do have it. Okay. So what's a climate goal? Is 80% by 2050. We've heard that before. It means cutting carbon use by 2050 by 80%. And it really doesn't take that much chutzpah because many have already done this. Statewide, the whole state of Massachusetts has already committed to that, which means that everybody in the state, on average, will have to achieve that. Are we on track to achieving this? We are, actually, which is pretty amazing. We're the most energy efficient state in the country. Does everybody know that? Okay. Thank you. All right, so if states and cities can do this, you can too. Be firm, be bold. It is not beyond you. So I request that you all check out your status with JCAN and try to move it ahead. We say Yasher Koach to all of you. Our speakers tonight on solar are great experts for you. We've got Haskell Whirling, who is the expert of experts, has donated his time to be here tonight. And Bob, Eric, and Fred are speaking about their respective 3 synagogues who have each gone solar. They each faced most of the same obstacles that you're facing or going to face. So that's the reason we put you all together. So I show this picture here. Anybody know what this picture is?
Here.
I don't actually know where it is. But what is it? It's a roof. The point here is that until yesterday approximately, that was, an overlooked, underthought about piece of our property. Today, it is very, very valuable. You may be facing solar and imagining that you've got all these obstacles to get from here to there, and you do, but that is valuable. How much value it'll be to you or another investor, that's what you're going to be struggling through, but it is valuable all of a sudden. Haskell, I'm going to introduce you by asking 3 questions. How many years ago was it that your company, Solar Design Associates, invented this crazy idea of putting photovoltaic panels on roofs?
1974.
1974, and you've been doing this since 1978. And the answer to the next question, one more answer. When is the best time for any facility to go solar?
The best time is yesterday.
Okay, let's welcome Haskell.
Thank you, Fred. I said the best time to go solar was yesterday. I think there's a story about when is the best time to plant a tree, which was yesterday or 20 years ago. And the second best time is now. So it applies to going solar. The best time is now. And I think if Hillel said it, if not now, then when? Yeah, that's fine. I just have to advance it.
While they're doing that to our speakers,
Okay.
I'm going to give you a 3-minute warning, a 1-minute warning, and then my alarm's going to go off.
Right. So just to give you a little history, I was fortunate enough to go to Israel in 1972 on an exchange program to Beit Sefer Kaduri, an agricultural high school in the Lower Galilee, for a year. And at the end of my year, in the fall of '73, there was an outbreak of a small war on Yom Kippur. And I was very concerned about what were the causes and what were the reasons why we had this conflict. And one of the issues was the oil crisis. We had a shortage in '73, and again it happened in '79, and it was very apparent to me that if we could get into renewable energy and free ourselves from the constraints of the oil economy, we'd be better off as Jews, we'd be better off in Israel, we'd be better off in the United States from a national security perspective. And I don't think that has changed very much since then, but the issue of climate has come up in the meantime that has made it all that much more important. And I was also very fortunate to go to graduate school here in Cambridge and study with Daniel Yergin, who wrote Energy Future, who brought out the issue of energy conservation, which we call efficiency, and renewables as a way of mitigating these national security impacts. So I was, at a very young age, 22, 23, smitten by the sun. And I think there is a Ner Tamid, and it is 93 million miles away. It's a great fusion reactor, and it proves that fusion does work. Massachusetts, I'm proud to say, is the 6th largest solar capacity in the nation right now. For a pretty small and cloudy state, that's an amazing fact. There are many sunnier states like Florida that have nothing even near the number of installations that we have here. And the reason we have such a great solar footprint in Massachusetts is policy. The policy that we got from the Patrick administration was a commitment to putting in 1,600 megawatts of solar, which we achieved 6 years early. And so once we got to the 1,600 megawatts, it was apparent we needed to have another incentive program beyond the SRECs, or Solar Renewable Energy Certificate Program, that would allow us to expand to 3,200 megawatts. And so the Baker administration was tasked with coming up with a new program in the energy legislation of 2016. And that program is called SMART, or the Solar Massachusetts Renewable Target Program. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what is coming to an incentive program near you very soon to replace the SREC program, which is practically exhausted at this point. And I say practically because there are still a few months left, and I noticed that none of the shoals here are from a municipal light department town. There are about 41,
Belmont is here.
Belmont's the only one.
Yeah.
About 41 municipal light departments that will not be participating in the SMART program because it is an investor-owned utility program only. So you've got probably till sometime midsummer when the SMART program starts to get your project completed. So it have to be a Tisha B'Av miracle. So no further ado, there's a couple of commonly used terms that will help you understand the SMART program. Many of you understand kilowatts, kilowatt hours. A standalone system, you may have seen a field of solar panels that's just feeding energy into the grid. And then a behind-the-meter system is something you would put on the roof of the shoal that would feed the load internally before it would export any energy. And that's a critical factor to understand SMART. It's either a standalone field or it's a behind-the-meter installation. Most of your situations will be behind the meter. Net metering, which I have to say, my firm, Solar Design Associates, was the first firm to do a net meter installation in Quincy in 1980. And it was only because nobody said you couldn't do it. We just interconnected to Boston Edison and nothing happened. And it became a program. Net metering credits is a way of monetizing or compensating you for the energy that you generate. You're just like a little power plant. And the retail rate of electricity, which currently for most homeowners is around 20 cents, is what we are now getting net metered compensation. In the SMART program, the compensation is cut considerably down to approximately 60% of that. So we'll get into this in a little more depth. The SMART program is in the last phases at the Department of Public Utilities before it becomes adopted as a tariff by the major utilities, National Grid and Eversource. We should be getting the program sometime, they say mid-summer. Some people here would put a betting pool out for September 1st, and other people might say mid-July. We don't really know yet. But we need to get prepared. And one of the things I want to emphasize, if there's nothing else to take away, is that being prepared for the beginning of SMART can start tonight. You need to get your applications for interconnection done. You need to start working on permits even before the program is launched. There's a lot of people very interested in this program, and because it's what's called a declining block program, each block of 200 megawatts declines in value by 4%. So this is 1,600 or 8 blocks of 200 megawatts. And in the first day of operation, you'll probably see, at least in National Grid, the first block and maybe the second block gone before noon. And we've seen this, I know John remembers when we had the Commonwealth Solar Rebate Program, when you had to actually call up on your phone, you had to hit send, within a half an hour, the entire rebate, the first block was gone. So it's important to be able to have the paperwork done in advance of July, if you can, so that you can be on an earlier block. Each block declines, like I say, by 4%. So if you're in block 4, that is 16% lower value. So it's important to get going sooner. The SMART program incorporates net metering in the areas where there is net metering, which is in National Grid, where there is no net metering. Let me say that a different way. Where there is net metering available, there is a cap on net metering. So in Eversource, which many of the shoals here are from Eversource, you can get net metering credits. But if you're in National Grid territory, there is a cap that has been met, and you'll get something else called an alternative on-bill credit, which has yet to be completely defined. So we're assuming it's going to be close to the default service rate, roughly 10 or 11 cent compensation. It's really important to be able to do the math and figure out what your compensation is. It's going to be a 20-year contract that you'll enter into with utilities, so that you will get paid the same amount every year. It's a very predictable income stream, and that is a benefit that is much better than what we had before, where it was a variable market-based solution. Okay, so I have to go through this a little quicker. There's going to be a base rate, which has already been established through an auction, and in National Grid, it is 55 cents, and in it's 15.5 cents, and in Eversource, it's 17 cents. But if you're doing a small system under 250 kilowatts, you get 150% of that. So you're getting 8.5 cents on 17, you're getting about 25 cents per kilowatt every year. If you do it on the roof mount of the building, which is where you most likely will do it, you'll get another 2 cents. So you'll get 27 cents. So you can build up these adders, but each of the adders has a limit of 320 megawatts in what they call a tranche. So the sooner the better. If you add a battery, you can get anywhere from 2 to 7 cents. And that could be a resilience thing. It could actually help you get through a storm. You could also be able to store the solar from the daytime into the evening. So batteries are something to be very aware of. They're coming down in price like solar did. you'll see battery prices dropping 20 to 30% over the next couple of years. So it's a very good idea to look at the batteries. Get through the next one. These are just the capacities in the block. Each block, you can see the values going down.
You can add a battery later, right?
You can add the battery later, and you can take the tax credit if you're going to be taking a tax credit. And that's something you want to discuss with each of the vendors here is, what is the best way to finance it? Smart is agnostic in terms of financing. Some people will find it's easier to have direct ownership and buy it outright. Others will find it's better to put up no money out of pocket and have a power purchase agreement or a PPA where a third party owns it, takes the tax credits, and gives you a discount on your electricity. You need to look at the different models and decide what's best for your congregation. There's no simple answer. Okay. Enough on that. This is, again, the size in each block, and then as the size increases, the percentage goes back to 100%. So you start off with a residential household, you get twice 200%. So if it's 17 cents, you get 34 cents, and so on. Most of you are going to find yourselves in that 25 to 250 kilowatt. And I think we have to thank Eric Grunenbaum for putting in the suggestion of breaking up the under 1 megawatt into various categories. That was Eric. Thank you, Eric.
I'll take the credit.
And then if you are on a building, there's 2 cents. If you can float it on a pond, good, well, God bless you. I don't know who got that in there. If you're on a brownfield or a landfill, there's 3 and 4 cents adders. This won't apply to you. The canopy is important. If you have a good parking lot that's sunny, putting up a canopy not only provides you with a way to get more solar than your roof. If your roof isn't structurally sound, it's a great way to do it. It keeps the cars cool, so after services you come out, your dog's not fried. Agricultural solar, if you happen to have a small farm or a plot of land that you could do growing combined with solar, you get 6 cents. Community shared solar is a great concept for people whose roofs don't work, and there's a way of doing community solar with a shoal or a church that I think Resident Energy has a lot to say about, and I'll leave it to them to explain it. But it's a reverse community solar model, where instead of having one big field feeding a lot of people, it's a lot of rooftops working together with one anchored institution. Very interesting concept. And I think that's about as far as we can get to today on SMART, but I think we'll be hearing a lot more about it in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months, as it is rolled out by the Department of Public Utilities. Howard?
Yes, given the quantity of information and the small size of everything on the screen, is all of this going to be posted online or something?
Well, Fred, you could put it up there.
Thank you. We just got permission to put it up. Thank you, Haskell. So, thank you very much, Haskell. That was great. So Bob is up next. So I just want to say that each of our speakers will be around after the main speaker part of the program is over, and you can ask them individual questions. And all the questions that you might think of are, as I said before, are answerable by our vendors here. And Bob, I'm going to put your slides up as you start speaking.
Okay. Does this go in there? As a whole. Okay. Hi, I'm Bob Zacher, and I was the chair of the Temple Isaiah Solar Committee. And my co-chair, Jeff Freiberg, is here, so raise your hand, Jeff. Okay. So Temple Isaiah is in Lexington. It's a big Reformed congregation, about 2,800 people. My contact information is there if you want to reach me after the talk. We installed our system in 2013. It was done by Sunbug. I think we were the first in the area to do it, right? Okay, sorry, there you go. Can you hear me? Yeah. I have the committee here. One thing about the committee I think is important to know. Everybody had technical or financial background. So you want people who can do work, especially from the very get-go involved. People from the Temple Finance Committee, they're going to be your gatekeeper to get your project approved. So include them from the beginning, and also keep the board involved in your process the whole time. Have a small committee so you can make fast decisions and don't get stuck. We had our first meeting on January 2013, 11 months later, we were installing the system on the roof. It was commissioned. So it doesn't have to be a long process. Everybody knows this. This is the polar ice cap in 1984. That's in 2012. I'm sure it's worse by now. So, you may have to sell. There'll be some people in your temple who maybe don't believe in global warming, so you might have to sell them a bit. The system we put on our temple was a 42 kilowatt system, which is pretty decent size. That eliminates 25 tons of carbon a year. A Toyota Camry is like 1.5 tons. So you're thinking like it's 17 or 18 of solid carbon Toyota Camrys that didn't go into the sky. I like to envision that. And that's a lot over 30 years. Think of all those Toyota Camrys of carbon that are not in the sky. The carbon dioxide lasts for 30 to 95 years. So it's really important not to put it up there. We've already talked about incentives. At the time we did it, solar was a lot cheaper than conventional electricity. It still is. The main point you want to sell your temple board is it's not going to cost them any money. If it doesn't cost them any money, they're all going to be in favor of it. Right? You may not make a lot of money, but as long as it doesn't cost anything, it's good. Our system provided 40% of the temple's electricity, and at the time it was 30% cheaper than N-Star. Here are the numbers that we had. Again, this is a couple years ago, so as you just heard, this changed. But at the time, the N-Star rate was 15.5 cents per kilowatt. The Sunbug rate was 11 cents per kilowatt, so we're saving 4.5 cents per kilowatt. Over the course of a year, it's not a huge amount of money. It was like $2,800. So you're not going to make a huge amount of money savings on this, but I think it's not the point, is to make a huge amount of money on it. You're not losing any money, and you're saving the environment, which is the main selling point. But there is one kicker. After 15 years, the temple can buy the system out for a nominal price, and then the electricity is essentially free after that. So we did a PPA, which is easy to sell to the board because there's no capital investment on your part. It's just a lease model where the solar company provides all the funding, and you just pay a constant rate for electricity. We did some power cells, which at the time were the best on the market. They had 20% efficiency. You want to think about the cost and efficiency of the cells you're putting up. There are trade-offs there. Those panels are guaranteed for 25 years, so you can get really good long-term warranties on these panels, so you don't have to worry about them. And panels tend not to break that much. The vendor paid for the whole installation process. We only pay for electricity generated. After 15 years, we can buy it for a small nominal fee. And the vendor does all the maintenance. So it's really like, they install it, they take care of it. You don't have to worry about it. You check up on it once in a while to make sure it's still making electricity. And our rate, at the time, it was 11 cents for 5 years, and then it increased by 2.5% for the last 10 years of the contract. So, that'll depend on the vendor. This is what our system looked like. We didn't do this system, but we did 42.5 kilowatts on the main roof of the temple. It's important that you have a good south-facing roof. So there's some design considerations. You want a large roof, good angle. If you have a roof that needs to be replaced, you want to replace it before you put the solar cells on. Roofs are good for like 20, 25 years often. And then aesthetics. One other thing, you want to think about snow guards, right? If you have a roof that's over a walkway, you don't want the snow sliding off onto the 80-year-old congregant who's then going to complain to the rabbi, right? So you can get snow guards that prevent the snow from coming off. And I think we did alpine snow guards. And your vendor can help you with that. This is a horrible picture, I apologize, but along with your solar cells, you have these inverters, which are the big boxes that turn it into from DC to AC electricity. And these are on the back of the temple. They're pretty big. They're man-sized. There are 4 or 5 of them on the back of the temple. They can be either inside or outside. These are actually pretty attractive. They don't look so from the pictures, but they're nice silver-looking things. They're nice looking and modern, so it's not ugly. And you can put them wherever you want. This is before and after pictures. You can hardly tell the difference. This is before, and this is after. All you can see is like the grid marks on the cells. We got black cells, which I think is aesthetically nice, but they have different colors. You can get whatever you like. Yeah, and you can't really see it, but the snow guards, we have snow guards all along here on the bottom row to prevent the snow from sliding off. And then almost all the vendors will provide you online monitoring, so you can see what you've produced on a daily, weekly, yearly basis. I just had it on the yearly chart. So our system generated 54,000 kilowatts of electricity, which is a lot when you think about it. And over the course of the life of the system, it was 220,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, which is, I think it's something like 850 pounds of carbon per kilowatt of electricity, right? That's what you don't put in the atmosphere if you make solar. So think of that. It's I don't know, 170 Toyota Camrys that haven't gone into the air, right? It's a lot of carbon you're not putting into space. Yeah, I think that's it. And so my summary is, you can save the world and save a little bit of money for the temple. At least you can show them you're not going to cost them any money. If you get the board involved and you tell them you're not going to cost them any money, they're probably going to go for it. If you get a good committee of the right people, it's going to be easy. The PPA is a low risk, low hassle way to go. What we did was we made a short list of 5 to 6 vendors, and then we got competitive bids from them. There's a big variance in the kind of deals you get and the rates they charge you. So just do a competitive, systematic bidding process. It's not hard. I mean, really, this was Jeff was here, it was a pretty easy process for us. Just be systematic and organized, and you can be done in a year or less. One hint is there's a thing called Solarize Mass, which is trying to get communities in Massachusetts to solarize. They have a list of vendors that communities have chosen, so you can look at them for a short list or get some ideas. And I think that's it.
Just have one question for Bob. Bob, after the installation was done, is there any effect among the congregants?
Oh, yeah, thank you, thanks. He's been primed. So after we did the installation, then, of course, a lot of congregants become interested in solar. And we had another 6 residential systems put in as a direct result of our congregation system, right? So it's not just the system that you put in, but it's like a multiplier. It almost doubled the total capacity, so.
That's okay.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank you, Eric, you're up next. Okay, and I just want to mention, while Eric's coming up, that, Tom, if you could raise your hand again. You have a great handout. Do you have enough for everyone here, at least every synagogue?
At least every synagogue.
Okay, so if each synagogue could make sure to take this handout from Tom before you leave tonight, it will walk you through the maze that you may have seen, or you're about to see, of your options out there. As Haskell went through, the landscape has changed, or is changing with the SMART program. And Jim Nail of Mass Faith Paralight just put this brand new package, 5 pages, but if you walk through it, it's pretty darn clear. Okay, Eric, thank you very much.
In case you're wondering, that picture that you showed earlier about the overhead, you can see that once it's changed into being the solar farm.
Thanks for that picture.
Super, thank you. Thanks, Bob and Haskell. That was really helpful framing. I'm going to put a little more fire in your belly here. I have the experience of being a documentary filmmaker, making a film in West Virginia from about 2009 to 2011. And this is what I saw, basically beautiful woods and mountains reduced to rubble. That's somebody's house in the lower left there. And when we buy fossil fuel or buy electricity made with fossil fuel, we are contributing to that, actually. Whether it's hydrofracking in Pennsylvania, or we're mostly off coal in Massachusetts, maybe completely, but we have a nuclear power plant in Plymouth. We get a lot of natural gas. We get large hydro facilities in Quebec. And so we are part of that economy. And so for me, when I finished that film, I started thinking about how could I do something about that. And it wasn't just the carbon. I saw a lot of health impacts down there too, and these were much more immediate. So the alternative is this. It's people who have jobs. They work. They live in your communities. They spend money here. They put solar projects on our roofs. It's local, it's helping the local economy, it's building stuff. It's laborers, it's electricians, it's managers, it's salespeople, it's all those folks who contribute to our local economies, and that's something I wanted to help with. Not only that, but the power plants up here are spewing out bad stuff which causes asthma, pulmonary diseases, all sorts of nasty stuff, and we really, we have the technologies to replace that now. So after finishing the film in 2011 about coal, and it actually there was a community at the heart of coal country that wanted to put a wind farm on the same mountain rather than shredding it to get the coal out. It really made those choices very stark for me. And sort of simultaneous with that, my kids decided they wanted a bar and bat mitzvah, and so we joined a little temple in Cambridgeport on Magazine Street. And I started looking, well, first of all, I decided I didn't want to make films anymore. I actually wanted to help solve the problem. And I got out of the film business at that point, although I still love the educational part of filmmaking and enjoy doing things like this, which in a way is connected to that. My kids, so this was 2012, and I joined this little temple and noticed that there was a beautiful south-facing roof, the one you see right there. And so I started thinking, wait, maybe I can use this to learn about how solar works, and did. But I discovered that first we had a lot of efficiency work to do. The two old houses that make up the temple, they're basically residential houses that were converted 30 years ago. And they were uninsulated. It kind of blew my mind that houses could stand for 200 years collectively without any insulation. So we first did that using the Mass Save program. It cost about $13,000. It took me, it's not a well-funded organization, so it took me about a year and a half to raise the $4,000 or $5,000 that was our contribution. We lucked into a grant for replacing our windows. We did what was called an energy efficiency barn raising, sealing holes everywhere. We got some help from a little nonprofit in Cambridge called Home Energy Efficiency Team. And then we embarked on a process of raising money to renovate the sanctuary and raise our roof. Literally, you'll see a picture maybe in a bit of a clear story window. And so I sort of had to put it on hold. So here we are 6 years later, and finally, I think about a year ago, I said, okay, we're done with all that stuff. Let's get to the solar project. I found a donor to contribute to replacing a roof, that roof right there. So I tell people who have old roofs, it's not necessarily the end of the world. Maybe you can find some folks to contribute to that. There's also one PPA provider I know that will consider replacing roofs and incorporating it into the overall project and still have it be no cost or some small positive economic benefit to the organization. The first thing, now I'm backtracking a little bit, but the first thing I thought of, since I was learning this industry, and now it had been a few years, I thought, let's do it ourselves. We can find 4 investors in the community who can put up the money, and they have the ability to use the tax benefits. So I made these complicated spreadsheets. Can everybody read that? Exactly. After doing this for a little while, I realized, you know what? I don't really want to be doing this in 15 years and reporting, filing LLC documents, every year for the next 15 or 20 years. So that's when I decided, look, there's a better way to do this, and I'm just going to do it that way. And that is with the power purchase agreement. You've heard PPA spoken a few times. Nonprofits, houses of worship cannot use the tax benefits, which can add up to about half of the cost, really, in savings. So you really don't want to lose that. PPA providers, investors are set up to do that. They also have the expertise to do projects like this, and they are responsible for them. They own them, so they care about doing a good job. They have the benefit of bulk purchasing power. They talk to solar companies all the time. They can get better prices than you probably could on your own. There are a couple different kinds of PPAs. The standard one is a discounted price of electricity. I think that's what you saw with Bob's presentation. We decided to do something a little bit different, which is with Resident Energy over here, Isaac, and with John's company, Sunwealth, in the back there, which, because we're kind of a small roof, it's really a 10 kW system. It just made sense in terms of simplicity for the exchange with Resident and Sunwealth is that we get 15% essentially of the power, the value of the power, and that it's always 15% through the life of the project, which I believe is 20 years. He's nodding, so yes. I wasn't sure if it was 20 or 25, but so basically, it's no upfront capital. It's a long-term agreement. It saves us money. I believe we were one of the first to use this program in, anywhere, I guess. It's the Solar Access Program. You can ask Isaac for more information about it. So, let's see, what else do I want to see here? So don't try to do it yourself, I think is a key takeaway. Having some folks who really care a lot about it, some passionate, internal champions is really important. I think that's you folks right here, since you came out on an evening to see this. I hope that means you care about this. This I got from John. Have a decision-making process. Whatever it is, you need to have that process, so you know who to talk to and how you're going to get permission. You want the facilities, and Bob kind of referred to this, the facilities person, buildings and grounds, whatever their title is. In our case, it was everybody's volunteer, so it was the building committee chair and the finance, or the treasurer in our case. I would get them on board privately before you try to present this to the board, because if those two folks are on your side, there's a pretty good chance the board is going to go along. And then bring it to the board with those folks present. In our case, they were both board members, so that was easy. I think do I have another slide? Oh yeah, there we are. It's the finished project. You can see that we need some siding below that, but the roof is looking pretty nice. You can see the clear story that we added that took about 3 years out of my timeline. I hope your projects are not 6 years like mine. It's the right thing to do. The technology is very well established now. There's no moving parts, almost no maintenance, and it makes a little money. It shouldn't cost you anything. It should make you a little something. It's predictable, it works, and as a utility scale solar developer said last week, you put the panels in and they smile at the sun. So final points, don't try to do it yourself, do a PPA. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Just do it. Don't be held back by little issues, you can solve them. Don't expect it to cover 100% of your electricity. I don't know where people got the idea that you should only do solar if it covers all of your electricity. That's a silly idea. And don't expect it to work when the grid goes down unless you invest in batteries, which Haskell talked about are coming down in price, and you might want to think about that at some point. But unless you're very well funded, you're probably not going to want to do that right off the bat. But if you do at some point, then people can gather there if there's a storm and the grid goes out. So it has benefits, but I wouldn't necessarily put that at the top of the list. And don't wait. If you wait, you're continuing to support that extraction industry that I showed you and putting carbon up in the atmosphere. So go ahead with it. Good luck, and I ask these people questions, ask me questions. Any of us are here to talk about it.
Very much, Eric. And just want to point out in your packets, you've got a handout that's two-sided on the back or front. It's the list of solar synagogues that we're aware of, including, excuse me, the 3 from our speakers today. And you'll see that they vary in size and when they went up and percent, as Eric said, and percent of electricity equivalent. So, and that brings up our next and last, final speaker, our host for the night, Fred Borgenek.
So I'm the VP of Operations here. It is a volunteer position. And let me disclose right from the start that I am an imposter. I am not an expert in the field. I am an engineer, so I speak the language a little tiny bit. And what I'm going to tell you is a little bit about our journey, how we got to where we got, which is an array that is about 80 kilowatts. This is a picture of our roof. We have a lot of flat roof up there, and we have a little pitched roof that you can see at the top that is south facing. Where are we now? We are, let's see if I can make this pointer work. We are right underneath, hello, there it is. We are right underneath this area right here. There's our sukkah, so that can tell you more or less when this picture was taken. We forecast a savings of somewhere north of $200,000 over the 20-year life of this roof. The first year savings we forecast at $7,500, give or take. So for those of you that are good at math, you will quickly realize that 20 years times $7,500 does not come close to $200,000. So where's the funny math? I'm an engineer, I'm good at this stuff. This is based on a prediction of the increase in in electrical power over time. And this is a well understood thing. You do a conservative estimate of what your savings are going to be. And keep in mind, this is not money in your pocket per se. This is a reduction in your operating cost, which translates into money in your pocket, kind of, sort of. And by the way, if you have any questions, please just interrupt on the fly, because that works better for me. All right, so we went live in October of last year. And for the first 3 months that the system was in operation, we produced about 10 megawatt hours. And for the next 3 months through the end of March, we produced another 10 megawatt hours. And you can see on the bottom there, that was the month of of April. It's a very exciting month for us. To date, we've generated 28 megawatts, which loosely translates into 17 tons of CO2. So we're very excited about that. But mostly what's very exciting, at least to me, is that in the month of April, we generated 8 megawatts. And hello, spring and summer. So we're very excited for the next 6 months, which are the peak of production. So the typical question that people ask me is, well, how much have you saved to date? In the 6 months that are not the peak producing months, we have already saved about $4,500, more or less. So we are truly excited about the next 6 months when we produce a lot more. So I'm going to go over the details of a power purchase agreement, which is what we ended up with. This is power purchase agreement for dummies, and the reason why I'm going to do this is because it came as a surprise to me. Basically, we use Eversource here, and we use a certain amount of electricity, and we pay Eversource whatever they bill us for that electricity. When you go with a power purchase agreement, you're still consuming the same amount of electricity. Maybe you'll start saving some, you put LED bulbs, whatever, but let's say we do not do that. So just to make the numbers simple, let's assume that we're going with 1 megawatt. When we're paying Eversource for that, we're going to pay them $240. When we install a solar array, if it produces 300 kilowatt hours, we agree to pay the owner of that solar system. I like to refer to it as a solar system because, we'll pay them $40, and because we produce 300 kilowatts, that means that we owe Eversource 700 for 700 kilowatt hours. And you can see how the prices move, but what gets really interesting is what happens if we overproduce. And you heard Haskell tell us about net metering a little while ago. So here's what happens in our case, and it may vary for you with a smart system. If our solar array produces 1,500 kilowatt hours, we're still consuming 1,000 kilowatt hours. There's 500 extra kilowatts that went somewhere. We have to pay for all 1,500, okay, which is why we're paying $195. That's what the solar panel array produced. However, okay, we are getting a credit from Eversource for that extra 500 kilowatt hours, and we don't get a check from Eversource. What happens, and this is where the net metering kicks in, the meter runs backwards. So we can now, at night, when we start using electricity from Eversource, the meter will start running forward, and we will consume that credit. And then the next obvious question is, well, what happens if you keep on building up that credit? What do you do with that credit? And one of the things that you can do is you can sell that energy to somebody else's meter. Okay, so is that clear? More or less? Did I screw it up horribly? Close enough. All right. All right. So now the next question, and I believe almost everything that Fred Davis said, but today he said something that I did not agree with. No, it's okay. It's all good. And it is not complicated. Solar is not complicated, not if you go with a PPA. You did say it was complicated, right?
More complicated than a benchmark.
More complicated. A benchmark must be very, very easy. So how do you go solar? Okay, so we and you heard that for nonprofit, tax credits sort of are not effective. The other thing is for somebody like me, I'm an engineer. I'm going to insult some engineers. I'm a lazy engineer. I go and find an expert, and I have the expert guide me. And in our particular case, we went to a energy buying consortium that specializes in nonprofits, and they have pre-negotiated rates with a solar installer who has a PPA program done, okay? Maybe there's a better deal next week. I don't care. We're going with them. They'll take care of everything. Okay, so one of the things that you need is a champion. In our case, we had two. One of them is David Harris, who is in the room right now. And Mike Breyer, is he here? No. Okay, so how many years were you beating at the board? A few. Now, what unlocked the board was going with a power purchase agreement where your financial risk is basically zero, and you go to the board and say, we're going to invest $0 in our solar system, and we're going to potentially save $200,000 over 20 years in operational costs. How do you say no to that? It's a done deal. So that's how you get to yes. And it's a simple way to get to yes, and you're not going to save as much money as if you put it in yourself, but I'd like to think that we're in the God business, not the power generation business, and on we go. All right. So our project was complicated in that as we were doing our due diligence to find out if the facility could take the solar panels, we discovered that our flat roof was expired by like 5 years, and we should have known by all the leaks, but you know, we're a bunch of volunteers, and we needed to fix the flat roof prior to installing the solar panels. And I don't know if you remember, our spring and summer of last year, it was unusually wet, and that means that they could not do the roof, so we were delayed and delayed and delayed, but we got there. And eventually, you know, we were able to proceed with the installation of the solar system. Now, one of the benefits of going with an expert is they own the system, they know how to do it, they'll stage all their materials, and they will install it. The one thing that I do advise that you do is, as a house of worship, there are things that happen which are out of our control, where we need the facility and we cannot have people stomping on the roof. So for example, if there is a funeral that has to be held in the facility, sorry, but the solar installer is going to have to take that day off, and that happens. So it's best to pre-negotiate these things, or at least talk about them with your installer, and they're usually very, very friendly. The installation itself, in our case, was incredibly fast. If you just look at the time that it took to do the installation, it took a long time on the calendar, but that's because of the weather. And then the most frustrating part in the whole process is that you finish your installation, it's ready to go, it's like a racehorse ready to bolt out of the gate there, and you have to wait. And you 1 minute, that's plenty of time. So you have to wait for the approvals, and it may take a week or 2 or 3. And finally you get, yes, go ahead.
Which approvals are you talking about?
This is the approvals from the utility to turn on your system, to basically finish the interconnect. One of the other things that you have to prepare for is sometime during the installation, you will have to have a planned power outage where you basically remove power for the entire building. You may need generators to keep your freezers going. And again, the installers are all set up to help you with that. So again, not a difficult problem. And then you get to plan your celebration, which is a very exciting time. And in my case, I got a little solar system mobile. And that is it. So any questions?
Thank you, Fred. So yeah, the complexity versus simplicity. I just wanted to make a comment, and I doubt this is a final comment, but I'll try. I hope you've heard from the commonality amongst the three, and if you look at that list that I pointed out, how many on this decision point of ownership versus PPA. Ownership, we're going to own the panels, we're going to own the system, or somebody else is going to own it. That's the PPA. If you look down that list, everybody went PPA. You notice that? So that's an important lesson. Each of our speakers emphasized that was the way to go. Now, in one case, it took 11 months. In another case, I believe it took 6 years. And Fred, well, you weren't on board at the beginning of that process, I think.
We were not looking at a PPA at the beginning.
Exactly. So my point is that, has anybody else faced this question of ownership versus PPA? Just raise your hand, you're not committing to anything. Yeah? The rest of you, any idea what I'm talking about? That you know what I'm talking about? Nodding? Okay, nodding of heads is good enough. Yes. So my suggestion at this point, I'll repeat what I said before. Pick up the handout from Mass Interfaith Power and Light. Very helpful. It's with the new smart landscape in mind. And Jim Nail walks us through this field, this landscape. But my suggestion is, having heard many of you at these various points before everything is final and getting stuck and getting stuck and getting stuck, my suggestion is at least come up with 2 different paths. If you've got some people, some advocacy for ownership, some advocacy for PPA, let them follow each and ask. It might drive the vendors nuts. I'm sorry, vendors. But my suggestion is, if you really have that advocacy, let each one proceed to the point of a proposal. And then if your committee, I presume you're all working at a committee level, if your committee still can't decide between the 2 of them, don't stay stuck. Bring it to the board. Get the sign-in from the board, the approval from the board people that our speakers mentioned, to bring it up to a board to say, we've got plan A or plan B, or plan B or plan A. And these are the pros, and these are the cons, and these are the pros, and let them decide. They're the ones who ultimately have to make a decision. And my suggestion is that yesterday we thought it was a little clearer. Today it might be a little cloudier because the smart landscape is different. So if you have this situation, try to not get stuck on it. That's my bottom line for that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David, who's then going to turn it over to David. Okay, thank you.
So just very quickly, I want to acknowledge the people who are behind the scenes. You've had front and center some great presenters, and you'll learn a little bit about representatives from the industry, but also we need to thank the volunteers at Jewish Climate Action Network, the administrative staff at Synagogue Council, Temple Aliyah Needham for hosting and their administrative and custodial support, and of course David Lowe, who you're about to hear from now.
any credit that flows to me really flows to Fred, because he was the impetus behind doing this.
Teamwork.
Yes, we collaborated last year on an event that I think was too long and was on a Sunday, a sunny Sunday in May. I think we hit the right formula today, so maybe this will happen again, but we don't know when. It's a real pleasure, because Fred and I went to high school together, and I think you know that, in like another state, so it's really cool to reconnect. So my quick job is to thank everybody, but my real job is to introduce the vendors who have come today to help us understand the real nuts and bolts of getting this done. I don't know that I want to turn off the opportunity for questions, but we don't want to take the whole room's time. So I think people can come up, talk to the vendors, come up and talk to the speakers, and hopefully everybody's needs will be met, and exchange contacts if you need to carry it further, which you probably do.
And you'll all also get a follow-up email from us with all of the information and websites and contact.
Excellent. So I'd just like to run down the room of vendors. We have Isaac Baker here from Resonant. You've already, he's been pointed to once or twice. We have Tom Nutt Powell from, not really a vendor, but a partner organization, which is Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light. They do, on an even broader scale, what JCAN is trying to do here. We felt the need to elevate the Jewish response, and they offer a lot of wealth and history and insight. We have Walter Gray from Power Options. I think Fred, our last speaker, alluded to what they do, but didn't mention them by name. Correct me if I'm wrong, Power Options is sort of a power broker, nonprofit, that helps other nonprofits find power, clean power mostly, that is affordable and alternative to Eversource and National Grid. And then John Abe is with Steve. And yeah, I knew I was going to stumble on your last name because I know you more recently, and I have it here. Steve Claremont, sorry. I wrote down for a reason. Steve Claremont is with Select Solar, so another solar installer. And finally, John Abe with SunWealth. And SunWealth is an investment firm that invests in solar. You can either be an investor with them, or you can receive their financing for your solar system. So I'll leave it there. Please go forth and ask questions. And of course, there's Rabbi Katie and Fred, myself from JCAN, and of course David from Synagogue Council of Massachusetts. Thanks, everyone.
So anyway, so that's the south-facing piece, and folks sometimes decided to do a partial replacement of their roof.
Pretty nice. I love it. It looks great. There's actually one in the Walden.
That was closely calculated.
Getting a charge station.
Correct. And then you have the option to buy out those panels, and you're going to get that option at year 10, 15. I just think that it's also but so this is all solar panels on this big south-facing side.
Solar panel?
Was Walt Henry there when they did it?
Well, we can contact you if you want to invest. That's the toughest spot for solar. I had no reason.